that will happen.
Thank you. Mr. McCaul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Russia's been in violation of the INF Treaty for many years. Putin has indicated his intent to build new and more sophisticated missiles to threaten our allies. I agreed with the President's decision to withdraw from the INF Treaty, and I commend our NATO allies for supporting that decision unanimously. Mr. Brzezinski and I guess Mr. Chalet, what can NATO do now to prevent this and deter this Russia missile development program?
Thank you, sir. You know, the Russians have been in violation of the INF Treaty for at least 10 years. And when you have one party of a treaty not abiding by it, its utility diminishes and maybe even becomes counterproductive if you're not willing to directly address that digression, that violation. I think the administration made the smart move in pulling out or announcing its intent to withdraw from the INF Treaty. I think it is wisely signaled to the Russians that if they are ready and demonstrate that they will destroy the existing inventory of intermediate-range missiles they have built, and I think it's about a brigade's worth, that we will go back. I think that's the right thing to do. The goal is to now figure out how we can avoid another destabilizing arms race, so to speak, an arms race with two sides building nuclear-capable intermediate-range missiles ground-launched. That's what the INF pulled off the table, so to speak. Looking forward, I think the following things. One, it would be useful if the Russians won't take up the administration's offer, we might consider proposing to the Russians an agreement in which we would agree that we will not deploy nuclear-capable ground-launched intermediate-range missiles. We could complement that maybe with limits on the number of missiles each side can have. And of course, this would have to include also very, very robust inspection regimes. We could consider joint renunciation of deploying nuclear INF range missiles. Our response also has to figure out what will we do as the Russians move forward with these deployments. And there are conventional responses we can take into account. The deployment of more robust air and missile defense systems. If there's one thing that's lacking in the administration's response, I think it's as follows. They have not publicly stated what are the implications of this violation. They just said basically, they're in violation and so therefore we're going to get out of it. But to me, but it's clear, this can be potentially extremely destabilizing. And the administration should be articulating how is it destabilizing, what are the military implications of this. I am wondering if they have tasked the alliance or NATO's military commander to do an assessment of what happens if the Russians deploy 100, 200, 500 of these systems. What are the implications for the alliance's posture? What should be the response? Such an assessment and such a public articulation of such an assessment would do a lot to help garner more public and international support for the administration's position.
The remaining time I have, I wanted the other three to comment. Turkey has become a precarious ally in many ways. Their rejection of the Patriot missiles and now willingness to buy the Russian S-400 missile system is a challenge for NATO members. And the NATO Supreme Allied Commander said that if they went ahead with this purchase, that the United States should not follow through with selling them F-35s. Could Michelle and Mr. Chalet and Mr. Liu, could you comment on that?
Congressman, I completely agree with your assessment of the concern of Turkey's purchase of the Russian air defense system. This has been something that, going back to the Obama administration, has been made clear to Turkish counterparts the mistake this would be, both in terms of what we believe is their cooperation within NATO and the fact that there would be real consequences beyond NATO, as you mentioned, the F-35. for example. And so one would hope that the Turks change their minds on this. I am doubtful, having had conversations with some Turkish officials recently, that they're going to do so. They feel quite defiant about it. I think this would be a mistake. It would weaken alliance unity. This is one of those issues that is an irritant in alliance debates. And Turkey is a frontline partner. I mean, Turkey has been, we should not forget, been living with a hot war on its border for quite some time. And so in many ways, NATO has come to Turkey's support as it's dealt with the ramifications of the Syria crisis.
And
but,
my time is, if I could just get a quick response from Ms. Flournoy and Mr. Lute, and I apologize.
I was fully supportive of General Scaparotti's testimony in terms of it from a technical and intelligence risk perspective. It's impossible if they go ahead with the deployment of the S-400s and integrate that into their systems. It will create very real constraints on what we were able to do with them in terms of any kind of advanced defense cooperation or future provision of future systems, including the F-35. So I think this is a real problem, and what Turkey needs to understand is that they're making not just tactical choices, systems choices, but strategic choices, and this will limit their ability to cooperate effectively within the alliance.
Mr. Lute.
I agree this is a tactical bad choice on behalf of Turkey, but the broader, more strategic issue is Turkey's significant slippage from the democratic values of the alliance. There's no ally among the 29 who has slipped further and faster from the founding core values of the alliance and has moved towards authoritarianism. So that's the